All right, so this is our fourth core publisher training. This week, we're going to be talking about creating posts and sharing content through the NPR Story API. On our agenda for today's call, we're first going to do an introduction to posts in Core Publisher, and then we're going to talk about how to create a post. We're then going to cover searching, browsing, and managing your content in Core Publisher. And then we're going to finish off by talking about how to share content, both through the NPR Story API manually and through querying. And then we're going to end up by talking about how to display external content with web clips. So before we get started, you're going to want to make sure that you are logged into your Core Publisher site and also that you have those Training 4 resources downloaded and on your computer available to go throughout our exercises today. We're going to start off in our first module by doing an introduction to posts. So we're just going to introduce what posts are and then look at the anatomy of a post. So a post is a news article, basically. This is the majority of the content that you're going to be creating on a regular basis. This is what your web visitors are coming to your site for. They include text, audio, video, and images, and your post can be associated with your programs, categories, tags, people pages, and topics, all those pieces of content that we talked about creating in the past few weeks. So let's actually take a look at a live post on a Core Publisher site. So what we're looking at here, this is a post on VPR, digital.vpr.net. And the title of the post is always going to be at the very top in large, bold letters. It's going to be true for all of your posts. And then you're going to have the byline and the date under the headline. If the byline links to a people page, this will be clickable. It will go to a specific, to the person's people page. As you scroll further down, you see that you have the share options here. You have Twitter, Facebook, Google+, and email. Currently, there is no option to add other share links. These are the ones that are available as a part of the template. So your web visitor can click on these to quickly and easily share your posts through social media. You then have you can choose to have a large image displayed at the very top of your post. This is also where any of your image slideshows would go. And you notice when you roll over the image, you see the caption. It also appears here at the very bottom. As you scroll down your post, this is where your audio players, your text, any other images can go here. Notice that your underwriting shows up on your post as well. So again, you can also have images inline as well as having images at the very top of a post. And then at the very bottom, as we keep scrolling down, you can also have pull quotes and other image alignments, and we'll go over all that today. But at the very bottom of the post, you're going to have the related program if there is one. There's a program that's related to the post that you are creating. You can put a link to it here at the bottom, and then any tags that you create are also going to show up at the very bottom as well. Under that, you're going to always have related content. Now, this is not something that's going to happen automatically, but you can manually add related content to a post. And if you do, it's going to show up in the related content section. If you don't have an image on the post that you are adding to the related content section, you're going to get a randomly colored rectangle in place of the image. But these are all going to be clickable. They're going to go to the post. And then at the very bottom, before you get to your footer, you're going to have your commenting powered by Discuss. So if you want to have commenting turned on your post, this is where it's going to show up at the very bottom, and it is powered by a third-party tool called Discuss. So again, that is what you're going to see for all of your posts. That is the general anatomy of a post in Core Publisher. Let me go back into my slides, and let's finish up this module. So that is module 1. So in this module, we reviewed just the general layout of a post. Just a quick underwriting notes. The first is that images can be both displayed at the top of the post and inline, so you're not limited to one or the other. And also, underwriting spots from DoubleClick for Publishers appear on all posts. They are always going to be right aligned and they're always going to group kind of towards the top of the post. All right. Looks like we have no questions, so we're going to move on to our second module. We're going to actually create a post in Core Publisher. So a post is a piece of content. So you're going to go to Add Content in your top gray and black admin bar and select Post from there. It's towards the middle of the list of pieces of content that you can create. So this brings us to our first exercise of our training this week. We're going to be creating a post. So if you go into that training for resources folder, you're going to see a few resources that we're going to be using to create our post. Creating posts is one of the most common tasks that you're going to be doing. We're going to go through the entire post form through this exercise. So I'm going to go into my test site. I'm going to ask you to log into your site as well, and also to pull up that training for resources folder. The first thing I'm going to have you do is just open up the text for post document and just select all and copy that. We're going to be pasting that into our post form. All right, so let me share my screen with you all, and we are going to create a post. All right. So we're going to go to Add Content up in our top gray and black admin bar, and we're going to select Post to create a post. All right, so at the very top, we're going to put the headline of our post. For this, let's just go with, well, actually, let's just paste into body, and then I think I put the headline there. Yep. So we have our headline here. It's going to be State Fair Returns Marks End of Summer. So you'll note that for the headline, it is always going to be plain text, no HTML. So you want to keep that in mind when you are creating your byline, your headline. You'll notice that the byline is automatically going to populate with your username or your people page name if you have one. If I wanted to remove this, for example, I'm just going to click on the X, and I can just type in my full name here. When I hit the comma, it's going to automatically separate that off as a person. Because I don't have a people page in Core Publisher, I'm not going to have a clickable link in my byline. But if I was to use someone, for example, if I started to type in the name of someone who did have a people page and then select them from the autocomplete, you'll see that their name has person : next to it, meaning that this name in the post will link to their people page. Next up, I'm going to add a category for my post. I'm going to select arts as my category. Remember that each post has one category, and that's from the list of categories that you created last week. You'll notice that as soon as you create a category, it's going to automatically populate the slug field. So the slug is an older field that used to show up on Core Publisher in our older view, but does not show up in Core Publisher now. It does not affect search engine optimization. You can actually just leave the slug as the category. As we move further down, now we're into the body section of our post. We just pasted in some text from another place, another program. You can do so as well. You just want to make sure that you're not copying and pasting from tools that add a lot of formatting tags, things like Microsoft Word, for example, because it's going to pull in a lot of formatting. It can affect the look of your post. But you'll notice you have the option to add bold, bulleted list, italics, numbered lists, hyperlinks, things like that. You also have the option to add images, audio, and pull quotes. We're going to talk about those in 1 second. You'll notice, though, that right next to that body text on the same line, you have this Show Slideshow link. When you click to collapse it, it's going to give you the option to upload an image. So if you want to have a large image that shows prominently at the very top of your post, you have to add the image here under Show Slideshow. You do not want to add the image at the very into the top of the body section, because it's going to actually be pushed down because of the ads. So you want to make sure, if you want to have a large image, like in the example that we showed prominently placed, that you add it to the slideshow section. So that's what we're all going to do now. We're going to click on Select Media. And we're going to go to Browse, and we're going to find that Training for Resources folder. And we're just going to select Post Image 1. We're going to click on Open and then Submit. It is going to upload that image to our slideshow section, yes, but it is also going to make sure that it shows up at the very top of the post. If you did have a slideshow that you wanted to share in your post, you would click on Add Another Item and add your other images there. Anytime that you upload an image to a post, we're always going to be good internet citizens, and we're going to put in not only a caption, but also the credit and agency. You always want to attribute your images to where you got them from. You always want to make sure you're using images that you have permission to use, and images that are like Creative Commons. You want to make sure that you're using images basically that you have the legal right to use on your site. All right. So as we look in the body of the example text that we have, we see there's a slot for a second image. So we're all going to go to where we've got post image 2, clear that out and put our cursor. So you can also add images inline. They don't have to all show up at the very top. To add an image inline in a post, you're just going to click on Image, and you're going to go to Browse again. And let's just select Post Image 2 this time. We're going to click Open and then Submit. All right, so now that our image has been uploaded, now we get to add another caption, more credit and agency information, and now we get to choose an image style. This is specific for your inline images. You can choose if you want them to display as left, wide, right, full, offset left, and offset right. It's basically determines how the image is going to show up on the post. I'm going to select wide, and then we're all going to hit save. This is going to add our image to our post. It's going to show up where we put our cursor. I don't know if you've noticed, this is a fair food related post to give someone to look forward to. I'm sure we're all at the end of the summer going to fairs and whatnot, and so this post is a reminder of that. There is also a space for a third image. For the sake of time, we're going to just skip that one, but you can always add multiple images to a post. You can also add audio as well in the same way. You would just put your cursor where you wanted your audio player to show up, click on audio, upload your audio file, and then you'll be prompted to add a caption for the audio player as well, which we do recommend adding. Another piece of audio that you can add to a post is a video file. So specifically videos from Vimeo and YouTube can be added to a post. So let's take a look. We've got a YouTube file here. We're just going to open a new tab and open that up. And we see that we've got our video here. So if I wanted to, for example, upload this video to my core publisher site, I wanted to embed this video in my post, I'm not going to go to share and then hit embed. You do not want to use the embed code for Vimeo or YouTube if you're uploading an a video. You always just want to use the share URL. So I'm just going to grab the URL, go back into my post, and just paste it where I want the video to show up. Again, you don't need to go into the source. You don't need to use the embed code. You are strictly just going to take the URL, paste it into the body. It's important to make sure that you do this because you want to make sure that your video remains responsive so that it will resize depending on the size screen that you're using. If you choose to just use the embed code, you're going to lock the size of the video. But if you just use the URL, you're going to allow that video to be responsive. So if someone's looking at it on a phone, the video screen will resize to be small to be seen on that smaller screen. Some other things to note about the post body section, you have the option to add pull quotes here that pulls out certain quotes from your post and has them display in a larger text. A really good example of pull quotes is on kbia.org. I like to show this one as an example because you can use pull quotes just to highlight quotes. You can also use them in longer pieces of news as headers. So on this post here, we'll see that they are using pull quotes as quotes, but they're also using them to break up sections of the post. So we've got the in the heartland section, and as we scroll further down, we see they've got a few images, another quote, and then spare the rod, which is another section. Again, this is all done with pull quotes. I just like to show that one as an example. You can also add a teaser to your post. So if we scroll back up to the top, now let's say, for example, that there's a teaser that you want to show up on the home page. You want to specify what shows up as the teaser text. Just create a space. Oops, sorry about that. And then just put in a line break. It's the icon between the cog or the little wheel and the image icon. It's going to allow you to put a break in. And what that does is controls what shows up in your homepage river and in any of your curated blocks as the teaser for the post. All right. So once you've got your award-winning text and video and images and audio, you're ready to go. Now we're going to start to add some tags and related content to our post. The first thing that we're going to do is under tags, you can put up to 5 tags for your post. As you start to type them in, you'll see that some will show up as autocomplete that have already been created on your site. So if you've already created some tags to go with your topic pages, they will show up here. But if I'm going to create a new tag, like State Fair, for example, I can just do that and then put a comma, and now I've created my new tag. The next time that someone goes to create a post after this one's been saved, State Fair will show up. I'm also going to put in food, comma. I'm going to ask you to do the same as well. And remember, with tags, you can have up to 5. So then we have our related content and related programs sections. So related content is going to allow you to create content, to add content that'll show up at the very bottom of the post to further engage your web visitors to spend a bit more time with your content. Let's add my other tag here. When I've added a tag that's already related to another piece of content on my site, in this example, it is a topic page, it's going to automatically suggest that as something that could be related content. So I can click the add button to add that piece of content to my related content section. I can also start to type in here and it'll try to autocomplete based on other pieces of content that I have. This is our test site, so I don't have a lot of posts, but for you at this point, I'm sure you have several post pieces of content that you can add here in the related content section. The same is true as with related programs. If this was, for example, related to one of my programs, I can start to type in the name of my program and select it from the autocomplete to then have this post show up on my program page. So related programs is where you're going to go to push your post basically to your program pages. You'll know for a fact that your post is related to another piece of content because you're going to see this NID here. Always you're looking for that. As we scroll further down, now we're at story treatment. So for story treatment, you have 2 options. You can choose to have your post show up in your homepage river. By default, that checkbox is going to be checked to make that happen. But you can, if you don't want your post to show up in your homepage river, you can just uncheck the checkbox. So for example, if your homepage river is specifically just for your news, and this was a post, for example, about an upcoming pledge drive or a concert that you've got going on at your local, in your local area, and you don't want this to show up in your news river, simply uncheck the checkbox. It won't show up in the news river. All right. So we're getting down to the bottom of our post. The first thing that you're going to be asked is sharing settings. So where else besides your site do you want this post to show up? If you want to push it into the NPR Story API to be shared and potentially ingested by other stations, then you're going to select the Push to NPR Radio button. However, if you don't want your post to show up potentially on other sites, if you just want to keep it local on your site, select the Keep Post Locally Only. So in this example, locally does not mean local to your geographic region. Local means local to your core publisher site. You then have options to share with NPR1 and also the PMP. So you have those options as well. And then you also have this authoring information tag. So in a moment, I'm going to show how to schedule a post to publish in the future. But right now, you can also set your post up to publish in the past. So if right now you're copying and pasting content over from your old site to your core publisher site, and you want your content to have um, you know, published dates that were in the past, like, you know, early July or something like that. You're just going to do that here under authoring information in the authored on field. You're going to just take this format here, paste it in, and then customize it to whatever, you know, date your post was originally published on. Looks like we have a question that just came in. So we have a question. Is there an option to have keep posts locally automatically selected rather than push to NPR? Good question. Currently, that is not an option in Core Publisher. By default, under sharing settings, push to NPR will be selected by default. All right, so now that you've got your post ready, everything's all set and ready to go. I'm going to clear out our authoring information. All right. So now our post is ready to go. We've already verified everything. It looks good. We love it. We're ready for it to be published. You've got three options. The first is to just publish it. Your post is ready to go. It's going to go live right now. You're going to hit the green publish button. If you're still waiting on something, for maybe you're waiting for a piece of audio or someone to proofread your post, you can hit the save option. It'll save the post as unpublished and you can move on, but you'll be able to always go back and edit the post and publish it later. You can always choose to preview your post in the same window. Again, it's going to save it as unpublished and allow you to preview that post. And then you can also schedule your post. So if, for example, today's Tuesday, but we want our post to really go live on Saturday at 5 p.m., we can just set that up here. Again, we're going to click into schedule. We're going to select the day, and then we're going to put in a time. It's always going to default to right now, so whatever the time is right now. You're just going to change it to whatever time you want your post to go live. And then you can hit the gold schedule button to schedule it. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to click the gold schedule option to schedule this post that we just created. I'm going to get a note that says my post is unpublished and will be published on the 20th at 5 p.m. I can always then click on view to see a preview of my post. I see that it's unpublished. I see all of my information, my image, both of my images, and also the video that we embedded using the URL. I'm seeing that as well as my related content, program, and my tags. So that is creating a post in Core Publisher. All right. So one more thing to note with your posts is that you can always edit them in the same way that you edit any other piece of content. You're just going to click on that edit tab when you're logged in. It'll take you to the post and it'll allow you to make changes to it. So that is creating posts. I'm going to see if we have any other questions. Looks like we don't right now. So in this module, we created a post, a few workflow notes. First, as a reminder, YouTube and Vimeo videos can be added to posts using the URL, not the embed code. So you're not going to use that embed code always with your YouTube and Vimeo videos. You're going to use the URL of the video. There are requirements for your audio files. They have to be MP3s, sampling rate 44.1. They have to be either 64K mono, 128K joint stereo, and they cannot be larger than 80 megs. So you want to keep that in mind as well when you are creating audio files. You can have multiple audio players on a post. So if you have a larger audio file, you can always break it up into smaller segments. Also, as a reminder, you can have up to 5 tags on a post. There is a limit to that. Anything over 5 and they will not show up on the post. When you are sharing your content, if you want to keep a post locally only, local just means not ingesting it into the NPR Story API. It does not mean local to your geographic region. And always remember that your post can be scheduled to publish in the future or backdated to have published in the past. So definitely take those into consideration when you're creating your post, especially as you're building out your site right now. All right, looks like we don't have any other questions about posts. So we'll move on to Module 3, creating, browsing, and managing your content in Core Publisher. So in this module, we're going to talk about searching for all of your content, not just your posts, browsing content, managing your drafts, and also your scheduled posts. So when you're logged into your Core Publisher site, you're always going to see Find Content in the gray part of the gray and black admin bar. That's going to take you to a tool that's going to allow you to search, browse, and manage your content. So in this module, we're going to just kind of review all of those tabs and what they mean. Some of them we've gone over already, but we're just going to talk about what all those tabs mean and what they do in Core Publisher. So if everyone can click on Find Content, I'm going to give you all a second to get there. All right. So everyone should be on Find Content. You've got a few tabs here at the top. We're going to go over those in a second. The first one is just the Content tab. You'll see that you have the option here to search. So you can search any of your content by keyword. You can also filter your content by author, status, or type. So for example, if I'm just looking for only posts by a certain person, I can use author to do that. If I'm looking for only unpublished content or only published content, I can search, filter that using status. And then lastly, if I'm only looking for a certain type of content, so maybe I'm only looking for topic pages, or I'm only looking for people pages or program pages, I can filter in that way as well. So for example, let's say I'm only looking for all of my topic pages. I'm looking for only published topic pages. I'm going to hit filter. And when I scroll down, it's going to give me what I'm looking for, only my published topic pages. I only have one. Once you have completed your search, make sure to click on Remove Filters to just take it back to the normal view of all of your content. You also will see that you have batch tasks on this tab as well. So if you have a whole bunch of content, for example, that you need to delete, maybe you created some test pages and now you want them gone, you can just click on the checkboxes for anything that you want to delete, go to batch tasks and hit delete. Same thing is true if you have a lot of unpublished posts and you want to publish them in a group. You can check them and then hit publish or unpublished, depending on what you want to do. And that's your batch tasks. Always make sure that after you click on the things you want to make the change to and click on the task, that you hit the execute button to actually make the task go. All right, so that's your content tab. You also see that you have a drafts tab right next to content. Throughout the time that you're logged into Core Publisher and creating content, on the back end, Core Publisher is creating drafts of what you're doing. So just in case you get logged out, you lose the internet, your power goes out, your laptop just crashes, No worries, Core Publisher is in the background keeping drafts of what you are working on. So if you are working on something and you want to see a draft of it, you can always go to Drafts tab, click on the draft, and get to it. You also have the Files tab. We're not going to cover this in a lot of detail, but basically, your Files tab is where all of the media that you are uploading lives. So any of your images, your audio, PDFs, they all live here at the Files tab. You can always come here to look for them. You'll also always see this images without credit or agency data. This is going to give you a list of all of the images that you've uploaded that don't have a credit or agency. You can click on that link to make edits to them to add a credit and agency, which again, we do recommend doing. You should definitely give attribution for all of the images that you use. All right, so we're going to talk about Get NPR and station content in 1 second. The last tab I wanted to cover on your Find Content page is the Schedule tab. So whenever you are scheduling content, it's always going to show up here on the Schedule tab. You can go here, you can see what's coming up, you can go to edit, you can make changes to a post, and then you can just publish it from here. But this is where all of your content's going to queue up and wait to be published. One thing to note with the Schedule tab is that as you're working on this, this is only your local content. You cannot schedule post from the NPR Story API. So for example, you can't pull a post in about classical music, like an upcoming concert, and schedule it to publish on your site next Tuesday. You have to publish it at the time that you're pulling it into your site. So when you're looking at scheduled, it's only going to ever be local content. One more thing to note with the drafts tab that I forgot to mention is that the drafts tab is specific to your user. So I can see all of my drafts, for example, but I won't be able to see my teammates' drafts. The same will be true for you. You won't be able to see the drafts of other people at your station. You'll only ever be able to see your drafts. All right. So going back to finish up this module. So this was module 3. We talked about how to search for content, how to manage your drafts, and also your scheduled posts. A few workflow notes. Again, after you do a search, always make sure to clear any filters so that you go back to seeing all of your content. Remember that you can only see your drafts in the Drafts tab and not the drafts of other Core Publisher users, so that is specific to you. And content from the NPR Story API cannot be scheduled. So scheduled is going to only be for posts created locally at your station on your Core Publisher site. All right. Looks like we don't have any questions, so we're going to move on to Module 4. So in this module, we're going to actually manually pull in a piece of content from the NPR Story API. So we're going to talk about the API in this module, review automatic NPR feeds, and then we're going to manually pull in a piece of content from the NPR Story API. So first off, what is the NPR Story API besides being an amazing tool that you definitely should all take advantage of with Core Publisher? So the NPR API contains posts that are published for NPR.org, so any syndicated programs, any posts that are on NPR.org are in the API, as well as posts from other Core Publisher stations, well, other member stations who are using Core Publisher or are ingesting their content into the API in another way. So it is an amazing resource of content that you can use on your site. You can search the API for posts that you can publish on your Core Publisher site, and I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. So why should you use the NPR Story API? Again, because it is amazing. The main benefit is that it allows you to publish posts from other sources to your site, and then your web visitors can read them there without having to go to NPR.org. So if there's a really fascinating story on NPR.org, you feel like your web visitors will be really interested in it, you can publish it on your site and your web visitors will come to your site to read it instead of going to NPR.org. And in Core Publisher, there are three ways that content can be pushed onto your site. The first is automatically through NPR Top Stories. So you can create a block on your homepage called Latest from NPR. You can push stories from the API to that block. They are automatically pulled onto your site, so they do live there automatically. It's just up to you to push them to that block. Some stations I know will ask me to turn that off for them. So some stations on this call that may not apply to you. You may not have that content coming in automatically. But for those of you who have not asked me to turn that off, then this is true. You can also manually grab the URL of a post that you see on MPR.org and pull it to your site that way. We're going to show you how to do that in a second. And then the third way is through custom API queries. So you can create queries on your core publisher site that will allow you to automatically pull content onto your site and then categorize it. And we're going to talk about that in the next module. So like we said, content will be coming in automatically, but there may be a time where you're on NPR.org or you are following NPR on Facebook or Twitter and you see a really fascinating post and you want to pull it onto your site. You can do so. We're going to do that in 1 second. To start, we're all just going to go to Find Content in our top gray and black admin bar to get to the Get NPR Content tab. So that brings us to our next exercise for today. If you look in the resources training folder, there is a document called resources for exercises 4 through 6. There is going to be a URL there at the top of that document that we're going to use to pull in a piece of content from NPR.org to your core publisher site. This is a great way, again, to just kind of sort of add a new sort of flavor to your site to kind of sort of supplement the content that you're creating. All right. So I already have that link open in my browser. It's actually called A Map of Where Your Food Originated May Surprise You. So I'm going to give everyone a second to get that post, that article open on their sites. All right. So now we're going to pull, let's just say, for example, that we saw this article shared on the NPR Twitter feed. We took a look at it and we saw, oh, this is so interesting. I know that my web visitors specifically are really interested in where their food comes from and nutrition. You get a lot of clicks on that content on your site. You want to pull this into your core publisher site. So let's go to core publisher. Again, we've clicked on Find Content in our top gray and black admin bar. And now we're going to click on Get NPR Content. All right. So at Get NPR Content, the first thing that we see here is a list of all of this content that can be pulled onto your site. Let's take a look at this really quickly before we move on to our exercise. You'll see here that you can click on any of these posts. Like, for example, Steve Gunn on World Cafe. If I wanted to pull this post onto my site, I can click on that. I can preview it. Take a look at the image. And if I want to pull this onto my site, I can click Publish Now. And I've automatically pulled that post on my site. I can tell it's there because it says published next to the name of it now. You can also click in here and you can search for content in the API as well in this search field. But what we're going to do now is click on Find by URL or ID. So let's go back to that post that we found. We're just going to copy the full URL of it and paste it into the Find by URL or ID field. You see that we then have two options. We can either make the published story date right now, or we can make it what the original date was, which was actually June 13th. So that was a few months ago. So we're going to change the published date to be now. Just select the Now radio button and click Get Story. It's going to then pull in my post. I can now control where this post is going to show up on my site. I can give it a category, like environment, for example. You'll notice that you cannot change the body of a post that you pulled in from the NPR Story API. We also ask that you do not edit the headline. Scrolling down to the very bottom, I can give my post some tags. I can use a tag that already exists. And I can choose whether I want this to display in my homepage river or not. And then I'm going to hit publish to pull this post onto my site. So now this post lives on my core publisher site. It's got my URL here. My web visitors can come to my site and they can now read this post. So that is pulling in a post automatically from the NPR Story API. I'm sorry, that's manually. That's how to pull in a post manually from the NPR Story API. So in this module, Module 4, we reviewed the benefits of the NPR Story API, and we also ingested a post from the API onto our site using the URL. A few workflow notes from this section. First, you can always search the NPR API from your core publisher site, or you can just go to npr.org and find a post there. A post from the NPR Story API can also either be published with the current date and time that it is right now, or the day and time that they were originally published. You do have that option when pulling a post in using the URL. All right. Looks like we do not have any questions right now. So let's move on to our next module. We're going to talk about querying the API using station queries and custom API queries. So these are two other ways that you can pull in content through the API to your site. The first is a station query. So there are other NPR stations that are using Core Publisher or have their own setups for ingesting content into the NPR Story API. You are welcome to contact those stations and ask them if they would be interested in sharing content with you. There is a tool that allows you to create a station API query. The only thing is that you will need the station's org ID. So every NPR member station has an org ID. You have an org ID, other stations on the call have org ID, your sister station has an org ID. You just need to ask them what their org ID is. And if you need your org ID, just simply send me an email and I can give it to you. You would just contact the station, ask them for their org ID, tell them you're using Core Publisher and that you'd like to share content with them. You would still need to do this manually. This doesn't happen automatically with the station API query. And then there's also the custom API query. So station query is specifically for stations. The custom API query allows you to pull in content related to other topics, the elections, sustainability, fitness, marine life, anything like that. You can pull that in to a specific aggregation page on your core publisher site. And so remember, our aggregation pages are our category, tag, and topic pages. You can use a custom API query to pull in station content, but you would need to pull it into a specific either category, tag, or topic page. So let's take a look at that because that sounds like it can be a little complex. First, taking a look at Get Station Content. So on that Find Content page, there is a Get Station Content tab. And when you first go there, you're only going to see a field to put in the org ID of a station. You're going to put the org ID in and hit the query option. It's going to then give you all of the content from that station. You will then, though, have to still manually click on a link to pull the content onto your site. But you can also create a custom API query that allows you to populate areas of your site with content if your news team doesn't create a lot of daily or weekly news. So again, we're going to go back to that resources document in our Dropbox folder, and we're going to create a custom API query now. All right, so I'm going to get that open as well to get some information out of it. And I'm going to ask you guys as well to do the same, to just make sure you have that doc open. resources for modules 4 through 6. And we're going to just take and create some queries now. The first we're going to do is going to be for the environment. So when you go to your manage and retrieve NPR API content, I should probably back up and tell you how to get there. So when you are on find content, and you see in this edit queues section, one of the options is retrieve and categorize NPR API content. You're going to click on that. And it's going to take you to this page here. The first thing we're going to do is let's just add 3 rows to our retrieve and categorize. This is going to be very similar to the admin that you use to create your navigation and your footers. And we see we have 3 columns here: API IDs, org IDs, and program, category, or tag. So for example, let's say that we have a tag 0125. And we want to pull content with that tag, which is related to environment, into one of our pages. You want to make sure that you have the pages, the category tag or topic pages created before you create these queries. The pages need to exist for the content to flow into. So let's say, for example, we've got our API IDs. We're going to put that in the API ID field, and then the program, category, or tag field, we're just going to type in environment. And we have 2 options, our environment tag or category. We're going to select the category environment. So I'm sure you're asking yourself, well, how do I get these API IDs? Good question. There is a Dropbox, there is a PDF in the Dropbox folder, the General Resources for Core Publisher folder, that has a list of tons of the most common API IDs. I recommend taking a look at that list. And if there's any API IDs that you're looking for that don't exist, you can just send me an email or make a list, and we can talk about them on your weekly one-on-one calls. All right, so this is what we're going to do if we want to push content from our, if we want to push any content in the API tagged with environment to our environment category page. If you wanted to do this with a topic page, you would just push it to one of the tags associated with your topic page. But the same can be done with an org ID. So let's say that you have a relationship with your local station and you want to pull all of their content. So anything that the station creates, you want to push it into a local category tag. Let's just say, for example, their org ID is 1. You're going to put their org ID in here. And let's see, we're going to push this to our local tag page. So again, this is going to be all of their content. There's not going to be a way for you to pick and choose with this tool, but with this, it'll allow an automatic feed of all of their content. When you're creating these queries, keep in mind that it's going to be all content moving forward, so it's not going to go back and pull in older posts. It's only going to be posts that are created after the time that you save your query. And then lastly, you're just going to hit Save Queue to save your query. All right. All right, so that is our 5th module. I know that right now, I'm sure your brain is swimming with how to actually use this tool. That is very common. So I do recommend taking a look at the custom API query tool and the station query tool and think about how you can use those, and we'll save those questions for your weekly one-on-one calls. But in this module, we learned how to pull in content from other member stations and also how to create a custom API query. A few workflow notes from this section. First is that you can only pull in content from NPR member stations that ingest their content into the API. So first off, they have to be member stations. And secondly, they have to be stations that are already pushing their content into the NPR Story API. There is a PDF in your core publisher resources folder that has a list of API IDs that you can use, and then contact us at any time if there are API IDs for other topics that are not on the original list. All right. So I see we've got a question that came in. If you want to send me an email about this one, I can take a look at this one outside of the training. Awesome, thank you. All right, so our final module for today, module 6. So far we've talked about how to pull in NPR content. So this is content either from NPR.org through the, just going to the site and getting the URL, or just going to get NPR content. And we also talked about station content, either just using the org ID to create either a custom query or go to get station content. But we have to admit that there are other sources creating great news that are not NPR stations. And you may want to promote their content on your site as well. And so the way that you would do that is through a web clip. So in this module, we're going to introduce web clips and talk about how to create a web clip. So web clips allow you to really quickly and easily post external content. So external meaning not from an NPR station or from NPR.org. So if you find an article in your local newspaper or an arts blog or something that someone shared on Twitter or Facebook, you can easily link to it using a web clip. The great thing about web clips is that you can also add an introductory paragraph so that your readers will have context as they're reading them. So when you're thinking about web clips, think about them in the same way as you would sharing something on Facebook. You're browsing the internet, you find a really interesting post about Pokemon Go, for example, and you want to share that with your Facebook friends. So you'll take the post, the URL, you'll paste it into Facebook, and then you'll write a little quip or something about Pokemon Go, so that when your friends on Facebook see this, they're not just like, well, why did they post this? They have an idea about why it's on your site. The same is true for web clips. Anytime that you're sharing something from an external source, just you add the introductory paragraph just to give a bit more context. So before we hop into our exercise, let's actually just take a look at a web clip on a live site. Give me 1 second to find it. I seem to have misplaced my web clip example. Give me 1 second. All right, so I'm loading my web clip example now. Sorry about that. So here is our web clip example here. We are on St. Louis Public Radio's website. And their title is How College Applications Change in the Era of Big Data. They've got their introductory paragraph, and it links to the web clip, which is from actually the Marketplace website, which does not ingest their content into the NPR Story API. So this is what you're going to see with your web clips. You're going to see the title, you're going to see the byline, which is always going to be the name of the person who is creating the web clip, your introductory paragraph, and then this block here. And the web clip specifically is powered by a tool called Embedly. And so you're always going to see the little Embedly logo and the information about the web clip. So let's create a web clip now. If you go into your folder, there's a URL for a post. British Airways stops musician from flying with cello as it did not have a visa. So weird. So I picked this post. I thought it was just absolutely fascinating. I'm sure if you're on, maybe perhaps your web visitors would find this super interesting too, and you want to share this with them. The best way to do it is through a web clip. So a web clip is a piece of content. So we're going to go to add content, and we're going to select web clip. It is the very bottom option. And the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to paste in the URL of our web clip in the embed a URL field. And now we're going to put in our custom title. You can choose to use the title of the original article. We recommend using something with a bit more context. So something like, so weird. Why did she need a passport for her cello? Something like that. Of course, you don't want to make it super clickbaity, but you do want to use something that is going to just encourage your web visitors to come and visit that post. And now you're going to put your lead in text in. Let's say, for example, that you are a music station and that you actually have a concert coming up. And so you wanted to tie this into that. Something like, we have a local cello group coming to visit our station this week. What if this had happened to them? Then you have your via. So this is where you're going to put where you found that post. Did you see it on someone's Facebook page? Did you come across it on Facebook or Twitter, or did you happen to see it in someone else's newsletter? If you have a via, you're going to put that in here, and then you're going to click on the embed option. When you click on embed, it's going to give you a preview of what you're going to see. My custom headline, my custom intro and text. It's going to give me the image that's going to be pulled in, and also the teaser of that post from that original source. I also have the option to display this on my river. So treat your web clip in the same way as you treat a post. Do you want to display your homepage river? What category page do you want it to go to? Do you want it to go to one of your tag pages or topic pages, for example? Treat your web clips in the same way that you treat your posts. And then when you're done, you're going to hit save. And it's going to automatically create your web clip. I'm going to have my title, I'm going to have my text, and I'm going to have my web clip here. All right. So, oh, I saw someone share the URL with me. Thanks so much for your help with that. All right, so taking a look at our Module 6 recap. So in this module, we created a web clip. Remember that web clips are powered by a third-party tool called Embedly. And so there are going to be some websites that are not going to allow for their content to be embedded. We see most commonly that this happens with paid subscription sites. So if there's a blog that has a paid subscription to actually access the content, or if there is a newspaper, a local newspaper site that only allows 2 or 3 views before you have to pay, before only like 2 or 3 views of a post or an article on their site per week or month. Those sorts of sites tend to not allow for Embedly, so keep that in mind. Also, we recommend always adding that custom intro paragraph to your post to give extra context. And we do recommend treating your web clips in the same way that you treat a post. So add them to your category pages, your topic pages, your homepage river. Definitely do recommend that. All right, so your next steps for this week, your homework assignments. We do recommend starting to double post your content on both your current site and your core publisher site this week. That'll just allow your team to start to get comfortable with the post form and also work out any kinks in your workflow. It also starts to create a sort of archive on your site. Experiment with pulling content from the API, bring any questions to this week's call, create any sorts of queries, experiment with the web clips, finalize your categories and topics, your flexi menu, your footers, your people, and your pages, all those things that we've been working on for the past few weeks. All right. So we have 1 minute left, so not a ton of time for questions, but in this week's training, we did an introduction to posts, we created a post, we talked about searching, managing, and browsing your content, and then we manually pulled a post onto your site from the NPR Story API, and then we did some querying of the API, both through custom queries and station content using org IDs. And then we finished up by displaying your external content with web clips. I know this is a super heavy training, lots to think about. I look forward to talking with you all on your calls this week just to work through things. So we have a question, will we be using the create post function to create program listings within our program pages? Good question. If by program listings you mean posts, that are going to show up on your program pages, then yes, you will use posts to create news articles that'll show up on your program pages. If there's, when you say program listings, you mean something else, feel free to send me an email after this call, and we can talk about how to set up what you're trying to do. But we are at our 3 o'clock Eastern time, so I'm going to shut down this webinar for the day. Feel free again to send me any questions that you have or to bring them to our weekly one-on-one calls. Thanks so much for your time today, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.